Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of AI in 10. This is the podcast that aims to bring you quick and insightful updates from the world of enterprise AI. And we're really focused again on the role of humans in the loop. I'm Jason,
And I'm Julia.
and it's great to be here again. We're from SuperAnnotate. Our goal at SuperAnnotate again is to help companies bring human intelligence to artificial intelligence. So we're here to support all of your kind of human in the loop AI workflow needs. Today, we are going to dive into the topic of um, basically eval life cycles and LLMs as a judge. We talked a little bit about this in the last episode, so folks who want to learn a little bit more about how we got here, please listen to that. Otherwise, we'll kind of jump right in. Um, I think first, this concept of LLM as a judge. Julia, what is an LLM as a judge? How should folks be thinking about that? Let's start there, maybe.
Yeah, an LLM as a judge essentially is a concept where you use a large language model or an agent to evaluate another large language model or an agent. Because those days we have such powerful models that it actually makes sense to use them in this kind of evaluator capacity where they take a lot of the workload off of a human's plate and sort of enable much more fast and large scale evals to work well.
Yeah. No, and I think obviously we're seeing a lot of discussion around LLM judges, right? Um, you know, I have my thoughts on this, but why do you think the industry is gravitating towards judges? Like, what are the advantages? Why use a judge?
Yeah.
Why, what's the advantage of using an LLM as a judge in this case?
Uh, the industry is indeed moving. I think we saw that shift when LLMs started becoming better and better. I think GPT 4.0 was kind of the catalyst. In essence, Jason, we know that evals are a very time consuming and kind of costly endeavor. And so while humans remain the gold standard and most evals, I mean, almost all evals are sort of seated with humans and there's always humans in the loop, there is a good case to use a well-crafted judge to essentially just reduce the cost, and with correct levels of human oversight, it can also produce a much more scalable eval system in production, in the training process. And so would love to also hear your thoughts. Like we do a lot of eval work at SuperAnnotate. We set up a lot of judges, kind of how you see that developing as well.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, Julia. Obviously, as you know, we see a lot of this is really kind of like one of the questions that enterprises are struggling most with, which is how do you bring together judges and humans? Like, what's the right way to
Yeah.
do that? We see companies that get stuck with using judges only, and we see companies that find themselves prohibited by cost or throughput with humans only, and they're trying to figure out how do we kind of bring those together and get the best of both worlds. And I think that's really a key topic, and I think that's a lot of what we're going to talk about here today. But I think it's a key topic for all enterprises to be thinking about is how do you solve that problem of bringing together humans and synthetic data to create these kind of AI systems? And we could spend a lot of time talking about that. On the whole, today we're focusing just on the eval lifecycle, and then how do we think about LLMs as a judge as part of that? Um, so Julia, we I think LLM judges are such a broad and a little bit of like an opaque term, right? So how do we help folks listening understand what makes a good judge? What makes a good LLM as a judge?
Yeah, so a good judge is, I mean, it's relatively simple, but at the same time, it's not easy to do. Essentially, it should be a good proxy for the evaluation that a human expert would do. So there is again, it's a simple process, but very complex execution. First, the company needs to decide what is it that it's evaluating, right? A lot of companies largely need custom metrics, some sort of custom client satisfaction rate or outcome that is, measured maybe by dollars generated or something, and then they have their best experts who are usually responsible for that process kind of annotate or go through some of the data. And then when the judge is trained, it produces the similar annotation, and essentially the quality of the judge is then measured in its alignment with the human experts. So usually you would say that if it's 90% aligned with the human expert evaluator, then that's a good judge, but it can also be dependent on the industry, because some industries are more conservative, some like medical might need even to go even further.
And is the goal of this to help enterprises get these, agent systems, AI systems into production? Is that how you think about the purpose of the judge?
Ultimately, a judge is a tool in a company's arsenal to essentially have a safe and highly functioning agent out there in the world, right? So it's one of different components. So we will have always human experts in the loop. I don't think that they can be replaced. And basically we have the judge that is evaluating, and it's constantly being kind of calibrated. And then we have a lot of kind of programmatic checks for the agent system. There can be a lot of these things. And that a good system is one where all of that works together in such a way that is cost optimized, does not overwhelm the human experts, and where the human experts learn what they need to do, learn what the data is telling them from different angles. So they learn about some edge cases that may be happening with the customers, where the customers are angry or there's some medical complications. I don't know. They learn about customer needs, and then they learn about kind of changing conversations, and all of that happens through the assistance of the judge as well, in particular.
Okay, so I mean these are important concepts around the value of having these systems, and it kind of leads me to my next question, which is about, you know, if you're a team, an AI team, if you're if you're at an enterprise, you're trying to deploy these AI systems, when should these teams be thinking about evaluating their models? What part of the life cycle does evaluation matter? I mean, it seems like based on the way you've talked about it, you need it in both, getting ready for production and once you're in production. But tell us a little bit about that.
I think, Jason, the evals is essentially one of the core elements of the success of each system. And tendentially, if you think about this MIT study of 95% failure rates, etc., one of the core situations that happens that leads to this kind of outcomes, in addition to data problems, etc., is that teams rush to produce an agent that seems kind of okay on the test cases that they do, because a good agent can maybe take 60 or 70% cases without a problem. That creates this illusion that everything is okay, which then kind of violently breaks in production because no good evals have been put in place. And evals are not a one type set situation, because I've actually looked at a lot of agentic data, and with every batch there is new things that the agent might generate that is an error that was not an error that a client thought about. So an example would be an agent that is very safe and compliant, but kind of tags all the customers as newbies or something like that. And that might be something that the customer does not appreciate because they don't consider themselves newbies. That's not something that would be a eval that a company would think about until they look at their data. So to sum all of that up, evals need to start very, very soon after an agent is created. And then that agent needs to generate dummy data, and that data needs to be evaluated, and then all of that goes all the way into production, where all of that systems kind of get standardized.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I think one thing that we've realized as we watch, enterprises deploy these systems, and as we kind of do our own work, is edge cases often appear in ways that, number one, are unpredictable. Number two, are things that you don't see happen with humans, which creates these kind of gaps in the ability of the folks that are defining these processes right? Like you may have a hallucination or you may have an error that an edge case that happens that you would never think about as a
Yes,
creator of
exactly.
these systems simply because it's outside the realm of possibility or the normal type of edge case that a human might do. This concept of where the agent hallucinates and is like, hey, all of these existing customers, I'm classifying them as new. That could totally happen, and you would never expect it because a human would look at this and be like, obviously, I see they have purchase history. Why would they be considered new? And so you overlook this as a possible hallucination that might happen. So uh, I think it's a really interesting point. This idea that like errors that AI systems um, create are very different than errors that human systems create. So very hard to
Absolutely.
predict. Um, so how many? I think the idea is that it depends, but how do you think about setting up like the number of this balance? How many humans do you need? How many LLM judges do you need? How do you think about this approach?
I think one of the errors that companies do is just to think about one judge, the one judge to rule them all. In my experience, that rarely works well in an enterprise level setup where you really have a lot of different metrics, a lot of different errors, etc. Because unlike a human, so far LLMs they get overwhelmed if their context window is filled with many many different metrics that they should be evaluating. So it's easier, although it's upfront more work, to set up individual judges for every metric. Again, that is more upfront work, but then every judge has a much shorter context window of metrics, and most of its context window is filled with the data it's evaluating, and it's much more accurate. So that brings us to sort of the number of judges corresponding to the number of metrics we're evaluating. And that can be anywhere from typically 3, 4 to 30 in some complex cases.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, that obviously really depends, right? And so I think it's important for enterprises to make sure that they are working internally with teams or working externally with folks that have experience and understanding of how to set these things up because these things can get very nuanced. Um, I want to close with one takeaway, Julia, that you have for enterprises around this topic.
I think my key recommendation is to think about the system that you're building more holistically early on, as including the agent, any kind of guardrails, and the judges and the eval kind of harness of code as one system, and build it from scratch in an iterative way where errors are caught early, there is more verifiable code, there's more judges, and the whole thing moves together. And that's, I think, where we as SuperAnnotate, we come in early. The earlier we come in, the more value we can provide because we can hold the client's head in all of these pieces, the guardrails, the eval, etc. Versus, I think the big mistake that is made now is people are very excited about an agent. It's relatively simple to be put in production with a lot of the tools. So people just move forward with an agent. And at the end, things start breaking kind of either in production or where the legal department walks in and basically too late. So start thinking about a holistic system, engage a trusted partner. And I think that's setting up a company for success.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Julia. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us today. Again, feel free to reach out to us if we can be of any help. And I hope you found the last 10 minutes useful. See everyone the next time. Thanks.
Thank you.